When you see the word IMAX attached to a movie title, you know exactly what that means. Big screen, big stars, big special effects. And as a business, IMAX has big ambitions.
People think of IMAX and they say, oh, it's a brand. People come to IMAX because of the brand. But the brand really represents a lot of technology and a lot of elements, and it's no one thing. We're a manufacturer, we're a distributor, we have big marketing business, we're global, we're in 90 countries.
IMAX is a small cap company that punches far above its weight in Hollywood. It's helped sustain an industry that struggled at the box office since COVID, delivering almost 4% of global ticket sales on only about 1% of all screens. Success has brought IMAX a lot of buzz. That's not enough for CEO Rich Gelfond.
Part of my background as a business person is always looking at return on investment and reminding people who report to me that, you know, we're not in business to do favors or to make friends. We're in business to make money.
This philosophy led him to promote Natasha Fernandes to CFO in 2022. A veteran of nearly 2 decades at the company, she's made a smooth transition to the more intense demands of the C-suite.
It's a very unique skill set, which includes presentation to investors, management of people.
First of all, I want to thank you all. You guys put a lot of time and effort.
You have to balance being aggressive and being contemplative and, you know, being friendly, but being tough.
From the quarter, and what do you think went well on the quarter?
She's terrific.
When you work within an organization and you grow up, you provide suggestions, of course, and you're building relationships along the way, but the biggest shift to moving to be CFO is you are now that leader setting that strategy and creating and holding essentially the company's purse in your hands.
Natasha brings a lot of financial discipline to the business. I think she brings a certain structure and a certain approach. So I may have a strategic idea or she may have a strategic idea, but then we'll say, you know, what does it cost and what's the return? And you really need the day-to-day reinforcement about making money.
Fernandes clearly embraces this role. And as IMAX sets its sights on the future, the team at the top has both confidence and chemistry.
Rich brings a bold vision, and we really collaborate well together. He has an entrepreneurial energy around him. I then bring financial structure and discipline, a view of return on investment, and really thinking through how do we implement his vision.
How do you monetize his vision while, of course, holding to that financial discipline and structure you mentioned, without blunting the creativity that's driving it?
Oh man, Scarlett, there's a big balancing act going on there. You're in a place where you can see all of this growth ready to happen, and you have the ability and the responsibility to make that happen.
"2025 has been a banner year for IMAX. It's captured an eye-popping share of opening weekend ticket sales for some of the year's top-grossing and most acclaimed releases.
We've seen that the premium formats, or premium PLFs, as they're called, have increased their market share of the box office, and that sort of flies in the face of the idea that consumers are very price sensitive. They are, of course, but to get that premium experience, let's say to see a Ryan Coogler film or a film by Denis Villeneuve or Christopher Nolan, they're all in on that, even though the price point is quite a bit higher.
This trend has made IMAX a bona fide power player.
We have a lot of momentum, and that what that translates into is much more influence over outcomes. Another way I put it is, we used to sit at the kids' table, and now we definitely have a seat at the grown-up table.
IMAX has a unique position at that table, next to both distributors and studios. The bulk of its money comes from 2 streams. Technology, products, and services refers to the systems IMAX sells, rents, and maintains. Most content solutions revenue consists of its share of global box office. While both streams have gross margins above 50%, growth in ticket sales carries even more upside.
The box office dollars, it doesn't cost us any more as we gain more market share. We've already invested the cost, we've made the film, we've put in the marketing, and so if that box office grows to be 10% or 20% bigger for a particular title, that didn't cost us any money. That actually then falls straight to the bottom line.
More screens equal more shots at these incremental dollars. IMAX is steadily expanding its global network. With 3 models for adding systems, the company can take a strategic approach to growth, mixing traditional sales and joint ventures to achieve maximum returns.
If you're in a market where there are lower per screen averages, you'd rather sell into that market. And as a matter of fact, in China, we've lessened the number of JVs we're doing because PSAs are lower there. And if it's a market like Japan, where there are a lot of opportunities for high-performing theaters, we'd rather joint venture in those markets because the return on investment looks stronger.
Which new IMAX markets have the most growth potential right now?
Japan is one of them. Australia has been another significant market. Middle East, Southeast Asia. We continue in certain parts of Europe as well, like France and Germany. Our rest of world market share is about 2%. And so if you can start to uptick that market share a little bit, that's really where you're going to start to get that incrementality in the model kicking in.
As its footprint broadens, so does the type of content IMAX is putting on screens. Hollywood blockbusters are still its bread and butter, but more and more, local language films are adding a hefty boost to the bottom line.
How do you get to a 1.2 billion, for instance, in a year when the industry globally is declining or growing at a much lesser rate than we are growing? That's how you get there, is you're being agile by opening that content aperture up and including not only Hollywood tentpole releases, but all of these local language releases along with alternative content. There is opportunity to make all of that additive.
We don't only do local language films in the market they're in, we do them in other markets. One pleasant surprise was the appetite for anime in markets outside Japan. We've done local language films in places like Saudi Arabia, which has a much smaller base of screens. And I would say some of our motivation for doing that was to create a cycle in that market where you jump-start it a little bit by having local language films.
IMAX has also ramped up development of alternative content like documentaries, concert films, and live events. And that's an area where the CFO gets directly involved.
Natasha actually plays a leadership role in our alternative content analysis. So for some of the smaller projects, I won't even be involved at all.
I'm involved in the alt content and the documentary discussions and the green light review and modeling and looking at the legal agreements.
How much room do you have to add shows and how much revenue can that add?
Utilization has been something I've been highly focused on for the past year. It's near and dear to my heart because I know that by increasing utilization, that's immediate incrementality to our model. And we have lots of room. But the piece that I think people miss is that you're bringing in a new consumer, and then they experience IMAX, and then you have a fan. And now you have a new consumer, and therefore you continue to grow your market share.
IMAX's strategy is part science, part art, and all about creating bonds with audiences. It's also strengthened bonds with filmmakers through the Filmed for IMAX program. Directors like Ryan Coogler and Christopher Nolan have hitched their cinematic vision to IMAX technology. Nolan's upcoming Odyssey is the first film to be shot entirely with IMAX cameras, next-gen equipment developed at his request.
I think maybe the biggest magic sauce is our relationship with filmmakers. And I think the filmmakers really know that. And it's not just that they shoot with IMAX technology, but also we're part of it and we collaborate.
And I see those relationships more like financial assets to ourselves as well. When a filmmaker leans in, it leads to you thinking through, how do we expand the network? Do we expand the network in certain countries for the release of that content? And then when they're marketing, they lean into the marketing as well, and they spend more time with us. That then results in a higher market share as well, right?
Is the goal ultimately to increase the overall number of films that can be shot with IMAX technology or using IMAX cameras? Or is there a premium to having a scarcity of releases?
I think we'd like to do more than we've historically done, but I think there is an advantage in having a scarcity.
It has been something that we continue to evaluate as a management team from a return on investment perspective and also from just a filmmaker feel perspective. Because if you put everything in film for IMAX, then do you take away the specialness of it as well?
Coming up, Natasha Fernandes takes me behind the scenes at Imax headquarters and explains how strategic financial input makes all the cool output possible.
The lens that I look at it through is essentially how many do we build and in what way? Because the one thing is we are going to invest to build it right and to build it for longevity.
This is Bloomberg. CFO Natasha Fernandes has steadily climbed the ladder of responsibility in IMAX's finance department since joining the company in 2007. She was corporate treasurer in 2020 when COVID lockdowns suddenly upended the film industry.
It was a time of crisis, and essentially you have every IMAX location across the world closed down, really no visibility into whether or not or when you're going to reopen and what that could look like. So managing cash flows became really important. And we've never actually been in that position before. We've always been cash flush. Within essentially about 2 to 3 months, we brought the net cash flows down from being an outflow of $10 million a month down to net neutral. And that was a really big achievement that I was proud of, because I really wanted to make sure the company was set up for success in the future.
So the New York office has the same thing outside of Rich's office?
Oh, okay.
CEO Rich Gelfond took note of her performance under pressure. Not long afterward, he tapped her for the company's top finance job.
Natasha wasn't an obvious candidate just because she wasn't 1 level down, she was 2 levels down. I'd say one of the hardest places to convince was my HR department at the time. They're much more by the book than I am. And they said, well, she's 2 levels down, not 1 level down. And we don't do that. We don't promote 2 levels. We promote 1 level. And I was like, well, who cares? I just want the best candidate I can.
When I visited Fernandes at IMAX's headquarters outside Toronto, we went to the facility where IMAX designs and maintains its cameras. The latest next-gen equipment was out with directors on filmed for IMAX sets, but there was still plenty of cool gear on view.
As the head of the finance department, do you look at all the things in this room and think, this costs that amount of money, this costs that amount of money?
Thankfully, no, I don't. When I think about cameras in general and what we, when we first, I'll give you a really prime example, the film cameras. When you thought about it, okay, are we building 2? Are we building 4? Are you building 8, right? And that's where I start to think about, well, what makes the most sense from a return perspective? Because yes, Nolan wants the cameras, but how many other filmmakers out there use the film cameras? The lens that I look at it through is essentially how many do we build and in what way? Because the one thing is we are going to invest to build it right and to build it for longevity. But do you need 10 of them? No. Building 4, that was the right number. And do we potentially want to build a couple more? Maybe a couple more, but I don't think we need 10, because they won't always be in use all the time.
Making challenging CapEx decisions is an annual exercise for the CFO.
We do sit with the R&D and technology teams and look at what would be the amount of capital they need in a year. So say I earmark them and say, if you had $15 million, what would you spend the $15 million on? And then they would allocate and say, and then you start to pressure test the projects that they say. And then you bring the $15 million down or up, depending on if there's a special project.
I heard the term pressure test from you, and I imagine that at different points you need to tell people no. What's that process like for you?
Oh yeah, it's a key role in the CFO position. It is a word that most people are used to, and yet they still think you're not going to say it.
Down the hall from the camera facility is the Network Operations Center. In this room, IMAX stays on top of real-time system performance data from around the world.
Our NOC Center essentially monitors our worldwide global network to make sure everything is working, that the reliability rate is maintaining a high percentage, and that our quality standards are being met. To me, it's all a very good investment, and actually it's a very healthy part of our business when you think about our maintenance margins. January 1 every year, I know we have $60 million of revenue. And how do I know that? Because we charge a fixed fee to our exhibitors, and so as our network grows, that dollar value immediately goes up, but it's a recurring revenue stream to us as well. So it's not, it funds itself, it is a high operating margin business, and it also protects our brand.
Our final stop required a costume change. We put on hazmat suits to enter a clean room. where Imax assembles optical components for projectors. Fernandes oversees financials for a manufacturing operation that sends equipment to some 90 countries.
We do everything here, so even if something is getting sold by Imax China or Imax Ireland or one of our other entities, it is all getting built here, shipped out to those entities, then shipped over to the customers.
Imax is a Canada-based company, and the manufacturing is done in Canada. How affected by the U.S. tariffs are you?
We've always been subject to tariff risk, currency risk, geopolitical risk, supply chain volatility, because we're a global company. And we actually source components worldwide as well. And so working through all of that, we've spent decades already building out and assessing what our risks are and weighing those. The immediate risk, obviously, with the U.S., I have been working closely with the supply chain group and working through what strategies could we do. I actually spent some time with the transformation team.
That kind of strategic collaboration is one of the things she likes most about her job.
And the contract database and how can we... Sometimes you think we're finance, we just have to take it as is, but you don't necessarily need to. You can actually add more value by giving scenarios and scenario planning, thinking through what are all the opportunities and alternatives. It gives me the opportunity to say, well, wait a minute, that deal doesn't look great when I actually lay it out after you work through all the details. But if you move this one little word around, or if you structure this sentence in a different way, it could mean something totally different from a financial perspective. And I'd say this year we've had a lot of those that have come across, and it's been a great opportunity. It also is what keeps it interesting, right? You get to work on new things.
Coming up, Imax has a big chunk of convertible debt coming due in 2026, and that means some big decisions for the CFO.
I'm constantly looking at the stock price. My key focus is not to create any dilution in the stock.
This is Bloomberg. Since the pandemic caused movie theaters around the world to shut their doors in 2020, global cinema box office revenue still has not climbed back to 2019 levels. Meanwhile, streaming services have stepped up production of original feature films, blurring the line between theatrical and at-home platforms.
I've always said I think that streaming and the movie theater are additive and complementary, not adversarial, because so many of the studios also own streaming services or have streaming services where their big screen movies will eventually wind up. We want to feed that pipeline with big movies, and movies that are shown in a movie theater, marketed for the movie theater, those have a higher prestige factor, so people seek those films out when they finally land on streaming.
But when Imax made an exclusive deal with Netflix to show Greta Gerwig's Narnia film in theaters just weeks before its Christmas 2026 streaming debut, the move raised some eyebrows and a few hackles.
I took a little grief from people for agreeing to do Narnia, and as a matter of fact, some of the studios weren't happy and some of the filmmakers weren't happy. But I think once I explained, that we're trying to find more content and more audiences and evolve the industry, they're more understanding of where we're coming from.
Usually out-of-home theaters and in-home streamers are competing with one another. Is that changing now?
I think it is changing. I think it's very symbiotic, and I think actually there's a really good future there. I think because of Apple's success with F1, I think they're going to continue to lean heavily into theatrical, and as you know, after the MGM acquisition, Amazon is leaning more into theatrical, and I'm hopeful that the Narnia experience will lead Netflix to the same conclusion. So we're hoping to be part of a bridge where we create win-win situations.
Imax has emerged from the depths of the pandemic with a healthy balance sheet. The company is carrying about $280 million in debt, with $230 million of that in convertible notes coming due in April 2026. Fernandes has plenty of options as she considers her exit strategy.
What are you thinking in terms of how you're going to address this debt?
First of all, I'm super pleased about those notes, because that is near and dear to my heart. I did that during the pandemic, and I was very pleased with that deal. And it was the first time we've ever done notes. Also, we got a great deal, 0.5%, and with the capped call brings us up to a $37 price point. From an investor point of view, I mean, that's a great stock price to be at before you have any dilution. And so I was really happy with it. It's unfortunate the term is over and that we have to address it.
Natasha led an effort to get a new revolving credit facility. The old one was $300, this one's $375. So we put ourselves in a strong position, whereas if we want to pay it off, we could pay it off with our credit facility. So we don't have to do anything.
Obviously, issuing new notes in my mind is the right way to go, in that from an interest rate perspective and a cash outflow, annual cash flow perspective, the interest on notes is much cheaper and lower than the revolver. However, from an investor perspective, I'm constantly looking at the stock price. What is the stock price right now? What would it issue at? If I put a capped call, what would that take me to? What would that stock price then be before any dilution kicks in? My key focus is not to create any dilution in the stock.
In June 2025, Imax expanded its share buyback program by $100 million. Gelfand and Fernandes say there's no specific timeline to exercise those buybacks.
When, the market digresses in its view of what we're going to accomplish versus what we feel, then we're going to be aggressive. I think we'll probably use it more in the short run if there are, blips in valuation.
If something was to happen with the stock price, or all of a sudden a change in any political environment or something on the Hollywood side, and you get an immediate dip in the stock price, it gives you an opportunity to say, oh, we have access, and we access to funds through the revolver, and we have approval on the share repurchase side, that you can then just go ahead and make the investment.
Natasha Fernandes may not have the name recognition of directors like Christopher Nolan, but when it comes to the financial future of IMAX, the shots she calls will dramatically shape the big picture. I asked her what she sees when she looks ahead.
What is the opportunity for IMAX in the next 5 to 10 years that most excites you, the single biggest opportunity?
I think the opportunity to penetrate rest of world markets. I'm really excited about that because we've seen such success domestically, and knowing that that success is within our ability and we just have to execute on it, that excites me, because that's within our control, and we just have to go make it happen. And we know it's there, and it would lead to a significant impact on our financials. And so that really does excite me from that perspective, and it gives me, the confidence in our long-term plan as well.
What's the challenge for IMAX in the next 5 to 10 years that keeps you up at night, or it gives you a lot to chew over and think about?
So not much keeps me up at night, which is great. But I do think, as I look at the biggest challenge, it's just, will the content hit or miss? And that's a big one. We experienced that in a big way last year with Joker coming out, and we placed a lot on Joker expecting to hit our box office guidance for the year, and essentially that title kind of pushed us out of the realm of achieving it. And we've taken some learnings from it and taken the challenge and tried to address it as an opportunity. And so instead of placing your bet into one and holding it there, how do we be more agile on the content side and now have the opportunity to now split our world apart and say, okay, we could play 10 different titles in other places so that we're not having the impact of that.
Complete this sentence. The hardest part of being a CFO is blank.
Wow. Managing my vision and what I want to execute on versus my peers and what they want to execute on. And how do we all get there together?
Bridging those two.
Yes, yeah.
So a friend calls you up, Natasha, and says, I've got great news. I've just been promoted to CFO. And you say, of course, congratulations. And then you offer what one piece of advice?
Be a partner. You have to be a partner. Being a CFO is one thing, and it is a big position, and it holds a lot of power, but you can't get things done on your own. You have to be a partner across the organization within all the different levels. You have to have an ear to listen.
I'm Scarlett Fu. This is Bloomberg.